so I'm about to tell you something that made my family think I'd lost my mind. I turned down a permanent residency offer in Australia to move to Malaysia instead. And before you click away thinking this is just another travel vlog, what I discovered in the first 3 months living here completely changed how I think about success, money, and what it actually means to live well. But there's one thing nobody tells you about Malaysia that I wish I'd known before I sold everything and moved here, and I'll get to that in a minute. Let me take you back to where this all started. Picture this: I'm sitting in my apartment in Sydney, looking at my bank statement, and I'm earning what most people would call good money. Really good money. But here's the thing that kept me up at night. After rent, after transport, after groceries, after all the basics, I was saving maybe 15% of my income if I was lucky. And I started asking myself this question that I couldn't shake: what's the point of earning more if you can't actually build anything with it? Now, I know what you're thinking. Malaysia? Really? When you have Australia? And trust me, I thought the same thing. But then I started doing the math, and what I found made me question everything I thought I knew about making smart financial decisions. But before I get into the numbers, there's something about the lifestyle comparison that absolutely shocked me, and it's not what you'd expect. Let's talk about money for a second, because this is where things get really interesting. In Sydney, I was paying about $2,000 a month for a decent one-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy, just a regular place about 40 minutes from the city centre. Here in Kuala Lumpur, I'm paying $600 a month for a two-bedroom condo with a swimming pool, a gym, and I'm 15 minutes from the city centre. But here's where it gets wild, and this is what nobody talks about. The cost difference isn't just about rent. It's about everything. A meal in a decent restaurant in Sydney would set me back about $25 to $35 easy. Here in Malaysia, I can eat incredible food, and I mean restaurant quality food, for $3 to $5. And we're not talking about compromising on quality here. We're talking about some of the best food I've ever had in my life. But there's a catch to all of this that I need to tell you about, and it's actually pretty important. Healthcare. This is the one that really blew my mind. In Australia, even with Medicare, if you want to see a specialist without waiting months, you're looking at private healthcare costs that add up fast. Here in Malaysia, I visited a private hospital last month, saw a specialist, got a full checkup, and the bill was $70. No insurance. Just walked in, got treated like I was the most important patient in the building, and walked out. The quality of care was identical to what I'd experienced in Australia. Actually, scratch that. The service was better because I didn't wait 3 hours in a waiting room. But let's pause here because I need to address something. You're probably thinking, okay, sure, things are cheaper, but what about the quality of life? What about infrastructure? What about feeling safe? And this is where my perspective completely shifted, and I'm going to share something that happened to me last week that perfectly illustrates what I mean. I'm standing in the middle of Kuala Lumpur at midnight, walking back from a night out with friends. It's just me, walking down the street, and I realize something. I feel completely safe. Now, I'm not saying Australia isn't safe, but there's something about the community vibe here that's different. The streets are alive with people eating, talking, kids playing even late at night. There's this sense of collective community that I'd forgotten existed. But here's what really surprised me about safety in Malaysia, and it ties into something deeper about the culture here. The public transportation system is something else I need to talk about. In Sydney, I was spending about $200 a month on transport, and that's if I wasn't using my car much. Here, the trains and metros are so efficient and cheap that I spend maybe $30 a month, and I can get literally anywhere. The trains are clean, they run on time, and they're air-conditioned, which when you're living in a tropical country, is not a small thing. But there's one aspect of getting around Malaysia that actually makes it better than Australia for a specific reason, and this changed how I work completely. Let me talk about the work situation because this is crucial. A lot of people assume that moving to a cheaper country means you have to take a pay cut or work remotely for less money. But here's what's actually happening in Malaysia right now. The country is actively attracting foreign talent and remote workers. They have this program that makes it incredibly easy for professionals to live here long term. And because of the time zone, if you're working with clients in Asia, Australia, or even Europe, you're in this sweet spot where you can communicate with everyone during reasonable hours. I'm actually earning more now than I was in Australia, but because I'm freelancing and consulting for international clients, my money goes about 3 times further here. Think about that for a second. Same work, similar or better income, but my purchasing power has essentially tripled. That means I'm saving more than half my income every month, something that was literally impossible in Sydney. But there's a twist to working in Malaysia that I didn't anticipate, and it actually makes you more productive, not less. The work culture here is fascinating. Malaysia has this blend of Eastern and Western business practices. People are professional, punctual, and there's this underlying respect in how business is conducted. But at the same time, there's not this intense pressure culture that exists in places like Australia or the US where you're expected to be switched on 24/7. People actually value work-life balance here, and I'm not talking about companies just saying they value it. They actually practice it. Coffee shops here are full of remote workers, freelancers, and entrepreneurs from all over the world, and there's this incredible energy of people building things. The internet is fast, the cafes have great coffee, and you can work from a space with air conditioning while it's 32 degrees outside. But what really got me was the business opportunities that I started seeing everywhere, and this is something I never expected. Now let's talk about something that concerns a lot of people, the weather. Yes, Malaysia is hot. Yes, it's humid. But here's what I realized after a few months. When everywhere has air conditioning, when it's built into the infrastructure, the heat becomes just part of the background. You adapt faster than you think. And here's the thing nobody tells you about tropical weather: you save a fortune on clothes. No need for a winter wardrobe, no need for heating, no need for all that extra stuff. But there's actually a health benefit to the weather that my doctor pointed out to me, and it's pretty interesting. The constant warmth means you're naturally more active outdoors. Parks are always busy, people are always out exercising, and there's this culture of evening walks and outdoor activities that happens every single day. In Sydney, winter months meant I'd hibernate indoors more. Here, there's no excuse. The outdoor lifestyle is consistent year-round, and I've never been in better shape. But the weather ties into something else about Malaysian culture that completely changed my daily routine. Food. Oh man, the food. I need to spend some time on this because it's genuinely one of the main reasons I'm staying. Malaysia is this incredible melting pot of Malay, Chinese, Indian, and international influences. You can have nasi lemak for breakfast, dim sum for lunch, and banana leaf curry for dinner, all within a 5-minute walk from each other. And the quality is insane because food culture here is taken seriously. People are obsessed with good food. But here's something about eating in Malaysia that actually relates to that catch I mentioned earlier, and it's about to tie everything together. The diversity of food reflects the diversity of the country. Malaysia is this fascinating blend of cultures living together, and you see it everywhere. Mosques, temples, and churches exist on the same street. 3 different languages float through the air in a single conversation. People celebrate each other's festivals. And what this creates is this incredibly rich, tolerant society where difference is just normal. Coming from Australia, which is also diverse, I thought I knew what multiculturalism looked like. But Malaysia takes it to another level. This cultural diversity means you're constantly learning, constantly exposed to new perspectives, and constantly challenged to think differently. I've learned more about Asian cultures, business practices, and different ways of living in 6 months here than I did in years of traveling. And this learning curve has made me better at my work, better at understanding clients from different backgrounds, and honestly, just more aware of the world. But there's a flip side to this diversity that brings me to that important catch I promised to discuss. The language situation is actually easier than you'd think. English is widely spoken, especially in cities. Most signs are in English, most people in business speak English, and you can get by completely fine without learning Malay. But here's the thing, not making an effort to learn the local language means you miss out on deeper connections. And this is that catch I mentioned. Malaysia is easy to live in on the surface level. Everything works, everything's convenient, you can get by with English. But to really thrive here, to really integrate and get the full experience, you need to invest time in understanding the culture and learning at least basic Malay. This is what I wish someone had told me before I moved. Malaysia will welcome you with open arms, it'll make life comfortable and affordable, but it won't force you to integrate. You can very easily live in an expat bubble and miss out on 90% of what makes this place special. The real Malaysia exists in the local markets, in the conversations you have with your neighbors, in the small moments where you make an effort to understand the culture. And once I started making that effort, everything changed. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Uncle Rahman. He's in his 60s, runs a small food stall near my condo. For the first month, we'd just nod at each other. Then I started trying to order in Malay, butchering the pronunciation, and he'd laugh and correct me. Now, 3 months later, he teaches me Malay phrases, I teach him random English idioms, and he gives me insider knowledge about the neighborhood that no guidebook would ever tell you. That relationship, multiplied across dozens of small interactions, has given me a sense of belonging that I never quite found in Sydney, even after years of living there. The expat community here is also something special. You meet people from literally everywhere. Germans running beach bars, Americans teaching English, Japanese chefs opening restaurants, British retirees enjoying their pensions, French entrepreneurs starting tech companies. Everyone has a story about why they chose Malaysia, and almost all of them have the same surprised tone when they talk about it, like they can't quite believe how well it's worked out. But more importantly, people who move here tend to be open-minded risk takers, which means you're surrounded by interesting people with interesting ideas. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, career growth. A lot of people assume that leaving a developed country like Australia means limiting your career opportunities. And if you're in a field that requires you to physically be somewhere specific, that might be true. But here's what's actually happening in the global economy right now. Remote work has exploded. Companies are hiring based on skills, not location. And being based in Malaysia puts you in a unique position. You're in the Asian time zone, which is where massive economic growth is happening. You have access to markets in Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, all within a few hours' flight. The cost of living is low enough that you can take calculated risks with your career, try new things, build businesses, without the constant financial pressure of needing to make huge amounts of money just to survive. I've started 2 side businesses since moving here that I never would have had the bandwidth or financial cushion to start in Australia. And here's something that really surprised me. The Malaysian government is actively investing in becoming a regional hub for tech and innovation. There are tax incentives for certain businesses, startup incubators, co-working spaces popping up everywhere, and a genuine push to attract talent and investment. The country is positioning itself for the future in a way that's actually pretty smart. But beyond the economic strategy, there's something about the pace of development here that makes you feel like you're part of something growing, something evolving. Let me give you a concrete example of what I mean. When I arrived, a new train line was being built. 6 months later, it's operational. In Sydney, infrastructure projects take years, decades even, to complete. Here, things move fast. There's this energy of progress that's tangible. New buildings, new businesses, new opportunities appearing constantly. And when you're living in a place that's moving forward this quickly, it creates opportunities that don't exist in more established, slower-moving economies. But I want to be completely honest with you about the challenges because it's not all perfect. The bureaucracy can be frustrating sometimes. Getting certain documents processed, dealing with government offices, it can test your patience. The traffic in Kuala Lumpur during rush hour is genuinely terrible. There are cultural differences that take time to understand and navigate. And yes, there are moments when you miss things from back home, whether that's certain foods, certain conveniences, or just the familiarity of the place you grew up. The political situation is complex, as it is in many countries, and as a foreigner, you're somewhat removed from it, but it's still present. The air quality during certain times of the year, particularly during the haze season, can be an issue. These are real considerations, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention them. But here's the question I asked myself: do these challenges outweigh the benefits? And for me, the answer was a clear no. What I've gained in quality of life, in financial freedom, in new experiences and perspectives, far outweighs the inconveniences. I'm healthier, I'm wealthier, I'm happier, and I'm building a life that would have been impossible in Australia on my income level. I'm not saying Australia isn't great. It absolutely is. But for my specific situation, my specific goals, and my specific values, Malaysia was the better choice. Here's what I think it really comes down to. We're told this narrative our whole lives about developed versus developing countries, about first world versus third world, about certain places being better than others based on these broad categories. But when you actually live in different places, you realize it's way more nuanced than that. Every place has trade-offs. The question is which trade-offs align with what you actually want from life. For me, I valued financial freedom over prestige. I valued experiences over comfort. I valued growth over stability. And Malaysia offered all of those things in a way Australia couldn't, not because Australia is bad, but because the cost of living there had reached a point where it was actively working against my goals. And here's the thing that I've realized since making this move: happiness isn't about living in the quote-unquote best country. It's about living in the place that best supports the life you want to build. So here's my challenge to you. Question the assumptions you have about where you should live and why. Question whether the path you're on is actually taking you where you want to go, or if you're just following it because it's the path you're supposed to follow. Question whether earning more in an expensive city actually makes you wealthier, or if you'd be better off earning the same or even less in a place where your money goes further. I chose Malaysia over Australia, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Not because Malaysia is objectively better than Australia, but because for my life, my goals, and my values, it was the right choice. And that's something only you can determine for yourself. But I promise you this: the world is bigger and more full of possibilities than we're often led to believe. And sometimes the best opportunities are in the places we least expect.